Okay, once you launch the Spirit Test Center Conformance application, you will see a list of test suites on your left hand side of the screen. The test suites are grouped based on the different technologies. Like for example, if test suite belongs to bridging, STP or STP test suite, or if the test suite is like OSPF, BGP, or RIP-NG, BFD, IS, all these test suites are grouped under IPv4 and IPv6 routing. As you can see, there are various technologies groups which we have for our test suites, and there are a lot of test suites which are supported by the Spirit Test Center Conformance application. In order to run a test suite, first all the conformance test suites run on the Spirit Test Center chassis. So you have to connect to the Spirit Test Center chassis first. So you click on the chassis toolbar button, port reservation. Now, if you have already added the chassis to your chassis browser, then the IP address or the chassis name will show up in the list in the chassis browser. If it is not already there in the list, you can click on Add Chassis, enter the IP address or the domain name of the chassis, and the chassis will show up in the chassis browser. Once the chassis is displayed in the chassis browser, you click on the plus sign over here in order to connect to the chassis. Once the application is connected to the chassis, it will show you the various slots which are there of the chassis and port numbers. In our example, we will be using port 7 and 8 of slot 3. So let's select the two ports of slot 3 and click OK. Once we are connected to the chassis, you can see that initially the icon which was displayed right next to the test suite was showing a lock, which meant that the test suite had not been licensed yet. And now it is showing a key which once you connect to the chassis, and if the chassis has a license for that particular test suite, it will show a key indicating that okay, the test suite, the chassis is supposed to license for this test suite and we can run this test suite. So we select the BFD test suite. BFD test suite is the one which we will be using as an example here. And you select the BFD test suite. Once you select the test suite, on your right hand side screen you will see a brief overview of the test suites, like version number, build date, the different specifications which are covered by the test suite, and a brief protocol overview. So let's load the test suite. The first screen displayed once you load the test suite is the test suite parameter screen. These are set of input parameters which the user has to specify in order to provide information about the DUT, and also the configuration information which is to be used for the testers in the test suite. All the conformance test suites are basically, they have a set of test configurations. So for example, in this BFD test suite, there are 3 test configurations: configuration 1, configuration 2, and configuration 3. So based on the configuration which is selected, the corresponding test configuration diagram is displayed in the window below. As you can see, this test configuration consists of one port of IoT connected to one port of the chassis, which is emulating tester A. Now, we need BFD to be configured on the IoT, and we also need one of the unicast routing protocol. It could be RIP, OSPF, or BGP, either one of them. So whatever is unicast routing protocol is used, you have to select the same unicast routing protocol in the tested parameters also. So the idea of these test switch parameter is just to make sure that the configuration of the DUT is in sync with the configuration parameters which are entered in the test switch parameter screen. Now these test switch parameters are grouped together based on their functionality and the kind of information they provide into different groups. Like for example, the first group over here is configuration parameters. These are generic parameters which are used for the particular test suite. Then we have a group called unicast routing parameters. These are the configuration parameters related to the unicast routing protocol BGP and OSPF. In this case, we are using RIP protocol as we have selected in this particular test suite parameter, and that's why the test suite parameters for BGP and OSPF have been disabled because we're not using them. Now, the next group is address parameters. These are basically the address information of the DUT, like the IPv4 address information, and also the IPv4 addresses to be used for the tester. As you can see, there are some parameters which are disabled. These set of parameters which are disabled are not applicable for the configuration, test configuration which is selected. So these, for example, these address parameters are for tester P. Configuration 1 does not have tester P, so these parameters are disabled. Now similarly, there are other parameters like authentication parameters to indicate what kind of authentication is being used, whether it's simple password authentication, keyed MD5, keyed SHA, or there is no authentication configured. Now this has to be in sync with whatever configuration is there on the DUT. And also there is a group called capability parameters where we are specifying what kind of feature support the IoT has. For example, in this case, does the IoT support the receipt of echo messages for PFT protocol? And then we have a set of parameters for the PFT timers, or it could be timers related to the test execution. Now, what we have to make sure during this process when we enter the value of the test suite parameters is that they are in sync with DUT. One way of doing that is you do the configuration on the DUT, and then you basically specify the same parameters in the test suite parameters, or you can just specify values or take the default values which are in the test suite parameters and configure your DUT. Now you can configure your DUT manually, or you can use the DUT automation feature of the Spirent Test Center Conformance application. We will be going in detail about the DUT automation feature in a different session, but as you can see, I'll just explain briefly that how you can use the DUT automation feature. So just click on this DUT automation and select we assume here that you already have a TICO file which has all the commands to configure the DUT. We'll go over the structure of the this particular TICO file and how to code this TICO file and other things in detail in a separate session which will be just on DUT automation. So you select the TICO file. Now once you select the TICO file, these two buttons over here, sync with DUT and source script, get enabled. Now all you have to do in order to configure the parameters values on DUT is just click on sync with DUT. And what it does is it logs into the router, configures all the information on the DUT automatically, and now all the test suite parameters are in sync with the configuration of the DUT. The next step is basically we have to map the testers which are being used in the test suite to the physical ports on the chassis. Now, as you can see in the configuration 1, we only have one tester, which is tester A, and tester A is represented by PCO-A. This is just a matter of terminology, and it's essentially the same as tester A. So we have to map the tester A to a physical port. In this case, we will use port 7 of slot 3. So once the port mapping is done, the next step, which is there in the test suite execution, is we click on select run test cases. Now, this particular screen, it shows the list of the test cases which are there in this test suite. Now, all these test cases are grouped together based on their functionality and the test scenarios which they test into various test groups. We can switch to a different view which gives us more detailed information about each of those test cases. If you click on this particular test case, on your right hand side you will see the objective of the test case, the various test steps which are used to test the objective, and the expected results. And you will see the category, whether this is a positive test case or a negative testing. Requirement level is, even if according to the specification it's a mandatory must, or it's optional, which could be may or should. And the configuration reference basically refers to what particular logical configuration is being used. The logical configuration for the test case is displayed in the window below. And also the specification reference indicates the section number, the exact place where the test suite is, the test case is derived from. Now, there is one particular feature which is supported by, which basically has been added recently in our performance application. Is let's go to the test suite browser over here. What we can do is we can actually import these specification documents into our application. So as you can see, the first specification is base 08, and if you already have a PDF document for those specifications, you can just map those specification documents. Once you have imported these the PDFs for these specifications, and we go back to the test suite, we can see that this particular specification reference for each test suite has been hyperlinked. Now what you can do is you can click on this particular hyperlink, and it will take you to the exact location in the specification where the test suite, a test case, has been derived from. And this is very useful in order to understand the context where the objective was derived from. And similarly, we can click on the various other test cases, and it shows the information about each of the test cases. And let's come to test case selection. We do provide various selection filters to select the test cases. Now you can select all the test cases which are applicable to this particular test configuration by just clicking on the BFD checkbox button. And as you can see, all the enabled test cases for this test configuration are selected. Or you can select test cases individually, one by one. Or you can select the test cases at a group level. And we have other selection filters which you can use. Is, for example, if you have already run a set of test cases and they have results for pass, fail, or inconclusive, and let's say you want to run only the test cases which has failed in the previous run, So you just say select and failed, and it will select only the failed test cases, or only the passed test cases if you want to do that. Now, there are some test cases in the test suite which need user intervention while the test case is actually running during the execution of the test case. For example, the test case brings the DUT to a particular state in the PFT protocol, and then the test case requires the user to make some configuration change on the DUT. So these test cases are called user intervention test cases. Now, this configuration user intervention action can be automated using the DUT automation feature, which we had used initially to set up the test configuration. And again, you can refer to the DUT automation session recording in order to get the detailed information how to automate the user intervention test cases. But coming back to the selection filter, you can select only the test cases which are user intervention, or you can also at the same time deselect. So this is particularly useful because, let's say, you don't want to sit at the machine while the test cases, all the test cases are running, and let's say you haven't automated your test suite for the user intervention test cases either. So you select all the test cases, and then you go here and deselect all the user intervention test cases. Once all these test cases are, and you can leave the machine, let it run, and once all these test cases are done, you can come back, select the user intervention test cases only, and run them one by one, if you have to be here at the machine. So just let's see, we'll just run one particular test case. We select test case 1.1 and hit the start button. As you can see, the middle screen is showing the execution of the test case, and you can see different message exchanges which are taking place between the DUT and tester A in this particular case. Once the test case execution is done, the right side of the screen, it shows a ladder diagram which is basically shows the message exchange between the IoT and the tester A. As you can see, we are receiving a bunch of BFT messages here from the DUT, and tester A sends a BFT message and get again BFT messages back. We do perform the necessary test steps which are specified in the test case description, and we get the expected result over here, and we have a pass result. So this particular test case passed the. Alright, so similarly you can select other test suites, other test cases, and run them. So this is as far as loading the test suite and setting the parameters and running the test suite is concerned. Now, other information which are available in the test suite application is basically you can click on this your test suite info. This is the same information which you saw in the test suite browser. View IoT config info, which actually tells you what kind of configuration needs to be done for each of the test configs. As you can see, we are just giving an example of a particular router. In this case, it's Juniper M5, and it gives you an idea about what all things need to be configured for each of the test configs. And if you click on View User Intervention Info, this basically tells, as I mentioned earlier, that some of the test cases, they require user intervention while the test case is executed. And these are the different duty commands which need to be executed for the test cases which need user intervention. For example, test case 4.7 and 6.4 need these two particular commands to be executed. Each of the user intervention actions are associated with action ID. Now, these action IDs are actually used when we are automating the user intervention actions using our duty automation feature. There is one more thing which I wanted to mention, was basically once we run the test suite, once we run any test case in the test suite, all these results are automatically logged into a SQLite database. Now you can either save these results into a separate file, or you don't need to save it. It will be automatically logged into a database. Whenever you want, you can access this information later from this result analysis screen. So as you can see, we just ran test case 1.1 and the result over here in the database. Now, let's say that you want to look at the result later sometime and you don't want to open the Spirit Test Center conformance application just to view the result. So what you can do is you can actually export this result file into a HTML file. You can select the test case, you can say generate report, and let's see, okay, I'll give a name for this file, which is tc11 d. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go here. Here we have saved the test case 1.1 BFD HTML results. So you double click on it and you can open it in any browser. It could be an Internet Explorer or it could be a Firefox. So as you can see the results, detailed results of the test suite, test case. So we click on test case 1.1. And we have the trace results in HTML format. Okay, let's go back to conformance application. So this is basically the running of the test suite. Now, also I would like to mention that the test suite parameters which you specify for each of the test configuration, you can save it to a particular parameter file, and let's say in this particular case we have test config 1, and later you can just load the test parameter file and you don't need to set the parameters all over again. So you can, the first time when you run the test suite, you can save the parameter files for each of those test configs, and next time for regression, or if you want to run it again, all you have to do is load the parameter files, map the ports, select the test cases, and hit run. So I think we'll stop here right now, and this is basically, this gives a brief overview of how to run the test cases for conformance application, and the various other topics, like for example DOT automation and tickle automation. Those are covered in the different sessions. You can refer to the recordings for those particular sessions. Okay, thank you.